The night felt thick and oppressive, the kind that clung to your skin and made every sound seem louder than it should be. The streetlights flickered unevenly, casting long, broken shadows across the empty sidewalk. I had just finished a late shift, my body aching with exhaustion, my mind dulled by routine. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and let the silence wash over me. The city at that hour usually offered a strange kind of peace, as if everyone else had agreed to pause their lives for a few hours and leave the streets to the sleepless and the tired. The low hum of an engine broke that peace. A police car rolled slowly beside me, tires whispering against the asphalt. I didn't stop walking at first. I had nothing to hide, no reason to be afraid. In this neighborhood, police patrols were common, and random checks were treated as just another inconvenience of daily life. Still, something about the way the car matched my pace made the hairs on my neck rise. The vehicle came to a stop. A door opened, then another. Footsteps approached, measured and unhurried. "Documents," one of them said. His voice was calm, almost bored, as if he were asking for the time. I turned and saw two officers in uniform. One stood in front of me, his face half lit by the street lamp. The other positioned himself slightly behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence without seeing him. That detail unsettled me more than the request itself. I reached into my pocket slowly and handed over my passport. My movements were careful, deliberate. I'd learned long ago that sudden gestures, even innocent ones, could be misunderstood. The officer in front flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning my face and then the document, back and forth, as if comparing two imperfect images. "Where are you coming from?" he asked. "Work," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He nodded, unimpressed. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant sound of traffic and the faint buzz of the streetlight above us. The officer behind me shifted his weight. I sensed him stepping closer. "We're going to conduct a search," the first officer said. Routine, routine. That word carried an odd weight. It was supposed to be reassuring, a signal that nothing unusual was happening. I had heard it many times before. Still, my stomach tightened. "Hands against the wall," he continued. "Don't move." I complied immediately. The brick wall was cold and rough beneath my palms. I spread my fingers, pressed my forehead slightly forward, and tried to keep my breathing even. My heart, however, had begun to pound, each beat echoing in my ears. I reminded myself that this was just procedure. I had done nothing wrong. The officer in front stepped aside. I could no longer see him, but I heard his boots scrape softly against the pavement. The one behind me moved in closer. Too close. I felt the heat of his body through the thin fabric of my jacket. "Stay still," he said quietly, almost near my ear. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind in that brief moment. I wondered if I had forgotten something obvious, if there was some misunderstanding I couldn't yet see. I thought about my family, about how annoyed they'd be if I came home late because of a pointless search. I even felt a flash of irritation, a silent complaint about wasting time. Then everything shattered. A sudden, searing pain exploded in my back. It was sharp and overwhelming, unlike anything I had ever felt before. For a split second, my mind refused to understand what was happening. My breath caught in my throat as if the air had been punched out of me. The wall seemed to lurch forward, and my hands slipped against the bricks. I tried to turn my head, to look back, but my body wouldn't respond the way I expected it to. The pain radiated outward, sending waves of nausea through me. My knees buckled. On the ground, a voice ordered. I collapsed, my legs folding beneath me. The pavement scraped my hands, but I barely noticed. The pain in my back burned, pulsed, consumed every other sensation. Panic surged through me, thick and choking. I couldn't fully inhale, couldn't gather enough air to speak. For a moment, the world narrowed to fragments. The smell of damp asphalt, the echo of my own ragged breathing, the distant flicker of blue and red reflected in a dark shop window. I realized with terrifying clarity that I had been stabbed. The word formed slowly in my mind, heavy and unreal. Why? The question screamed silently inside my head. Why would they do this? I was following orders. I was standing still. I had trusted them. "Don't move," one of them said again, this time harsher. As if I could. My body trembled uncontrollably, shock creeping in alongside the pain. I pressed my cheek against the cold ground, trying to stay conscious, trying to make sense of the situation. I wanted to protest, to demand an explanation, but my voice refused to come. Boots moved around me. I felt hands briefly patting my pockets, rough and efficient. The search continued, absurdly, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. as though a knife had not just been driven into my back. The night, which had seemed so quiet before, now felt hostile and enormous. The streetlights glared down without warmth. Somewhere nearby, a car passed, its driver unaware that a life had just tilted off its axis a few meters away. Lying there, helpless and bleeding, a cold realization settled over me. The danger I had always imagined came from dark alleys and unknown faces. I had never truly considered that it could come from the very people I was taught to trust, delivered calmly, efficiently, under the cover of a word like routine. Cold was the first thing I truly noticed when awareness crept back in. It seeped through my clothes and into my bones, sharp and unforgiving, as if the ground itself were trying to claim me. My eyes fluttered open, and for a moment the world was nothing but blurred lights and shifting shadows. Sounds reached me in fragments, muffled voices, the distant wail of a siren, the low murmur of traffic moving on as if nothing had happened. I tried to move, and pain answered immediately, fierce and commanding. It anchored me in place, a burning reminder that my body was no longer fully under my control. A groan escaped my lips before I could stop it. "He's conscious," someone said nearby. The voice didn't belong to either of the officers. It was unfamiliar, edged with urgency rather than authority. Faces hovered above me, distorted by the angle in my fading focus. A stranger knelt at my side, his jacket brushing against my arm as he spoke quickly into a phone. Another figure stood a little farther back, hands clasped nervously, eyes wide with shock. The police were gone. That realization came slowly, sinking in with a bitter clarity. There was no explanation offered, no reassurance, no promise that everything would be fine. Just absence. The people who had stopped me, searched me, and shattered my night had vanished as if they had never been there at all. The siren grew louder, cutting through the haze in my head. Red and blue lights painted the buildings around us in restless colors. An ambulance pulled up, brakes hissing, doors slamming open. Paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, their presence both comforting and terrifying. Gloves snapped on. Questions were asked. "Can you hear me? Do you know your name? Stay with us." I tried to answer, but my voice felt weak, thin. Each word took effort, like pushing against a heavy current. They carefully rolled me onto my side, and the motion sent another surge of pain through my back. I clenched my teeth, fighting the urge to scream. Hands steadied me, firm but gentle, and someone told me to breathe, to focus on their voice. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, the night sky swam above me. Clouds drifted slowly, indifferent to what was happening below. I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. The straps tightened across my chest and legs, holding me in place, grounding me in the reality of the moment. Inside the ambulance, the air smelled of disinfectant and metal. The doors closed, muting the outside world. The siren started again, louder now, vibrating through my skull. A paramedic leaned over me, checking monitors, speaking calmly, explaining what they were doing. I nodded when he asked if I understood, though I wasn't sure I truly did. My thoughts kept circling back to the same point, refusing to move on. The uniforms, the word, routine, the quiet certainty in their voices. I had obeyed every instruction, trusted every command. That trust now felt like a fragile thing, shattered into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. The ride to the hospital felt endless and strangely brief at the same time. Pain came in waves, rising and falling, blurring the edges of my consciousness. When the ambulance finally stopped, the doors opened to a wash of bright light and hurried footsteps. I was wheeled through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and echoed with distant voices and beeping machines. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, their faces serious, focused. Questions repeated, tests ordered, hands pressing here and there, careful but relentless. I stared up at the ceiling tiles as they moved me from one room to another, counting them without realizing why. It was something to hold on to, something predictable in a night that had spiraled out of control. Later, much later, I found myself in a hospital bed. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional footsteps in the hallway. My back throbbed dully, the pain now contained, managed, but not gone. Every breath reminded me of how close everything had come to ending. A doctor stood at my bedside, explaining the injury in measured terms. I listened, nodding again, absorbing the words without fully feeling them. Stable, recoverable, lucky. Those words floated around me, hollow and insufficient. Luck didn't seem like the right word for what had happened. When the doctor left, the silence returned, heavier than before. I stared at the wall, tracing the faint cracks in the paint with my eyes. Images replayed in my mind without my permission, the wall under my hands, the sudden pain, the sound of my body hitting the ground. Each replay tightened something in my chest. What hurt most, I realized, wasn't just the physical wound. It was the knowledge that something fundamental had shifted. The world no longer felt ordered in the way I had believed it to be. The lines between safety and danger, right and wrong, had blurred. Authority no longer meant protection. A uniform no longer guaranteed restraint. As the hours passed, visitors came and went, medical staff checking vitals, a nurse offering water, a quiet word of reassurance. Each interaction was kind, professional, human. And yet, beneath my gratitude, there was a growing sense of distance. I watched them the way one watches a scene through glass, present but separated. Alone again, I let my thoughts wander to what would come next. Reports, questions, doubt. I knew my story would be met with skepticism by some, disbelief by others. I could already hear the unspoken questions. Are you sure? Did you misunderstand? There was a weight to that future, a burden I hadn't asked for. Still, as exhaustion finally pulled me toward sleep, one clear thought cut through the fog. I was alive, scarred, shaken, but alive. And the truth of what happened mattered, even if it was uncomfortable, even if it challenged the stories people preferred to believe. In the dim light of the hospital room, I closed my eyes, holding on to that thought. The wound in my back would heal with time. The wound left by betrayal would take longer. But I knew, with a quiet resolve, that I would not let it fade into silence.